And we are live, 2 minutes late, and the product of advanced age behind the scenes has crept into the into the show, but that's all right. It's all good.
That's
Um,
okay, man.
yeah, it's all good. Welcome. We are here, episode 65 of An American Werewolf in New Jersey. I'm here, the American Werewolf, and as always, happy to have Eric here from Hey Internet. Eric here.
Always
I hate to sound repetitive.
it's that age, right?
Yeah, hey man, I don't know. I don't have a script, I'm just sort of, talking as we go. So
Always
thank
a
you for coming
pleasure.
on. Yeah,
Always a
yeah,
pleasure.
yeah. It's always great to have you on here. So um this is just a week of fun movies.
hmm
We've got this week, right now we've got Wolf. Tomorrow we've got The Fog. It's just and we'll talk about this more obviously tomorrow, but we did not have The Fog planned. Another movie was planned. It was going to be The Legend of Hell House with Vincent Price. But then we ended up switching it up and we're going with The Fog. And I thought, what's more appropriate for Halloween than a Carpenter movie?
That's true.
And a Carpenter ghost story of
hmm
all things. But this movie in particular, I'm looking forward to getting into. So are you ready to go?
You got to do it. Let's do it.
Boogie Woogie. So while you were away, the Wolf has joined us here. So welcome to the show.
What's up, man? Happy full moon.
That's exactly right, and happy Wednesday as well. I was thinking about it, and I was doing a little reading. This is our first Nicholson movie that we're covering, and it's always just fun talking about Nicholson on general principle.
I can
But
only think of one other Nicholson movie where he was doing genre. To be honest,
what's this now?
I can only think of one other movie where Nicholson was actually doing horror.
Yeah.
Other than this, I mean, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, and The Shining is. It's not a small movie to tackle,
right?
It's not, and we've sort of stayed away, not deliberately. I'd like to get into some of these at some point, and maybe we will for next year. Some of these large movies we haven't tackled. The Exorcist. I kind of tackled The Omen at the beginning, but I kind of blew it off because it would have been for me personally. The original one would have been a something shitty.
Right.
I thought that the remake was much better. But the large, epic sort of horror movies we haven't really gotten around to yet. But coming back, this is the first one where we've had Nicholson. But this is also it might be the first horror movie we've ever had that deals with office politics.
Yeah.
No kidding. The horrors of office politics, right?
Yeah, the horrors of office politics. I mean, and again, we come back to another movie where, there's a very human element that almost sort of overrides the supernatural things that makes it so damn relatable. You've got Nicholson. Nicholson at this age, I checked it. Nicholson was 57 when he played this role. So you've got a man who is past middle age. He's past middle age, and he's starting to, get ready for, I guess, for that, that long trip into the golden sunset, of retirement. All these things are happening, and all of a sudden, I mean, everything just kind of crashes on him at once. And for anybody who's at that age, you're desperately trying to hold on to, I guess you would call normalcy, or something along those lines. You're not looking for a lot of big squall-sized waves or anything like that. And then, of course, in the course of one evening, everything just kind of comes crashing down, or in a couple of evenings, everything just kind of comes crashing down on this guy.
Yeah, no kidding. I'll say this first. I was excited that when you asked me to do this because, we said, it's cool seeing like Nicholson in like a horror genre movie that's not The Shining. But I was excited because Nicholson actually started in horror, with the Roger Corman stuff. That's where he got his start. He was in the original Little Shop of Horrors. Okay. If you've seen the remake, he was the Bill Murray character of the dentist patient and stuff like that. And he's done a bunch of like Edgar Allan Poe, Roger Corman stuff. So I was excited to see him in not just a horror movie that wasn't The Shining, but a werewolf film. Because when you think of werewolf, you don't think of Jack Nicholson being in a fucking werewolf movie. You know what I mean?
No, but at the same time, I was thinking, who better? Who better? To play this wolf kind of character. I think as werewolf movies go, it's an extremely underrated film.
Oh yeah.
It's an extremely underrated film. I think that, it just still bothers me to this day. I think like The Howling gets a much better, higher rating in terms of like the top werewolf movies, whereas a movie like this, it usually doesn't fall into people's typical consideration.
You got to consider the time it came out and the fact that it's pretty much an 80s movie with pretty stocked with 80s actors and characters, but it came out opposite Pulp Fiction, right after Reservoir Dogs, right in the middle of the indie movie explosion. So you got this, you got a studio pick that's essentially an 80s movie. It screams old school, and I don't think a lot of people were paying attention to those movies at that moment in time.
Yeah, nobody was listening to was talking about Mike Nichols. Right. In the 90s necessarily. You and I talked about that when we covered the Blair Witch and all these, new directors and, Kevin Smiths and the Tarantinos and the Robert Rodriguez's of the time and, all these different things. And so, yeah, it is easy to see how a movie like this would sort of just get ignored. And that's quite unfortunate. I mean, we're looking at almost 30 years now since this film has come along. And it's still, I watched it, I finished the last 15 minutes of it yesterday or something like that. It still holds up. This is still a very solid werewolf movie. It's got great atmospherics. It's got great performances. Again, you've got the human element, so you're invested in, like all of these characters. You actually care about what's going on. There are so many different things going on. You've got office politics. You've got adultery. You've got, I don't know if this is the appropriate term, ageism. It's not necessarily discriminatory, but I mean, he's at that point in life where, somebody's after his job.
Well, the business was looking for the younger upstart, so you can see it that way.
Yeah.
With James Spader. And I'll say this, this was only my second time watching it, and I haven't seen this in probably decades. Maybe when it first came to like VHS, if anybody listening, under younger than us, before Blu-rays, there was these little box things that you put in something called a VCR. But I'll say this, like, I knew that it wasn't like straight up horror, like there was werewolf scenes and stuff like that, but I knew there was a lot of, I thought politics or whatever you want to say. But I'll tell you this, I was never bored. I was really invested in like what he was doing with what is he? He was like the head of an editing firm or something like that.
Yeah,
I was really invested with him and Christopher Plummer and all the bullshit that he was going on with James Spader. I'm like, when is James Spader not a douchebag? You know what I mean? So I knew something was going to clash with those guys, and I was ready to see where that stuff was going next, along with the werewolf stuff. You know what I mean?
Yep. You've got top level performers there.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got a really great story there. And you've got a director who doesn't seem to be in the way very much. He just lets them do their thing. And let me say this, Spader is, in my opinion, Spader is equal to Nicholson in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
He's very much his sort of dark, image. because they're different but the same. They have the same job, or they're struggling over the same job. They both sort of have this thing going on where they both get bit. So they're both really kind of reflections of each other, and
they share the same woman.
Yeah, they share this. You're absolutely right. They share the same woman, and so I thought Spader was just fantastic in this. Let me start out for people who haven't seen it. I mean, it starts out very simply with Nicholson driving, and he ends up hitting what appears to be a wolf on the side of the road, like you would hit a dog or a deer, and he's really kind of shaken up about it. I mean, Nicholson isn't some flashy guy. He's driving a Volvo station wagon,
Right.
So, he's just kind of the senior editor at this firm, and he's been doing it for 30 years, and he's a career guy. He's 50, he's in his upper 50s. And so he hits this dog on the way back from this, this business trip. And as he attempts to move the dog when he thinks it's dead, or the wolf bites him on the hand. And I thought it was a very telling scene. The next morning, the wolf kind of runs away, but his wife's in the shower and he's brushing his teeth, and she's like, "Did you close the deal?" And he's like, "Yeah." She's like, "You're a genius. What did you do?" And he's like, "I did it the old-fashioned way. I begged." And that was just, for me, a clear indication of, this guy really wasn't at the peak of his powers right here.
Yeah, it's where he's at in life.
Yeah, it's where he's at in life. He's kind of on the decline. So maybe it is time for, a fresh injection of blood, with some new leadership, so on and so forth. There are a lot of different clues that happen along the way that let you know that, Jack's not, he's not playing Jack. Usually when Jack Nicholson is playing Jack, he's the rooster. He's the alpha, but he's not playing it here. He
starts out not being the alpha, but he actually asserts his dominance and becomes Jack at the end.
That's very true. Yeah, that's true. What ends up happening is his company, his editing publishing company, or the book house, is being purchased by a billionaire played by Alden. His last name is Alden, played by Christopher Plummer, who I just thought did a fantastic job in this. He doesn't, the small things that he does, because he's so powerful, kind of shape so many things. But to see him acting there with Nicholson, he really played, especially as, Nicholson sort of in that, slope-shouldered, kind of posture that he is in for the first half of the movie. He does actually quite a good job. They're unlikely people that you would think to put together. But they do quite a good job. Oh
yeah, I honestly haven't seen Christopher Plummer in a lot, like maybe a handful of things. My wife loves him in The Sound of Music. That's like one of her all-time favorite movies.
Okay.
And I've seen him in this. I'm sure there's a couple other things, but he's always good. Hell, he's even in Dracula 2000. I think he plays like the old. He's Van Helsing.
Dracula 2000.
So that's what I like about. He can do anything. He always has a memorable role, whether it's in a movie like that, movie like this. He's always one of those guys that, if you see him attached, his character is going to be portrayed great.
Yeah, you're always going to get a fantastic performance. Now, what ends up happening is that Nicholson is under the impression he's going to be replaced. Everybody gets invited to this big dinner, and there's a great line in this movie from David Hyde Pierce, who's in the background there, and he's like, "Don't you think it's a little Roman to invite people to a dinner, to find out if they're still going to have a job or not, But what ends up happening is that, he loses his job and essentially is offered a job he really doesn't want, like in Eastern Europe. Like who buys books in English in Eastern Europe? And what the worst part about it is that his job has been given to his protege, played by James Spader, who knew it all along and clearly has not mentioned it to anyone. Plummer's telling Nicholson the entire time they're having the discussion on what his future is going to be, that this guy just nagged him to death like 24/7 for his job. And I guess for anybody who stayed at a job long enough, those kinds of things happen. You know, you get that person who really, you know, is just kind of coming after your gig every once in a while. You know, someone trying to stab you in the back. You know, someone causing trouble. You know, and then you've got, you know, the whole other thing, because not long after that, he finds out that he's also sleeping with his wife. So
that's what I mean. Like, Spader is always great, but it's like he's never a good guy. But the thing is, with that, you always know that this is going to be a guy you're going to love to hate.
Yeah.
Because Spader, you know, he's so good at like playing that douchey character, that underhanded character. But there's something about his performances. He's so suave about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what I think is so great about Spader and everything. Like from this to, what was it, Less Than Zero, or even like Age of Ultron.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. He's always good.
Less Than Zero is a hellish movie, man. That's based on that Bret Easton Ellis and Robert Downey Jr. and was it Jamie Gertz back then? And who was the other guy? Was it Andrew Garfield?
Andrew McCarthy.
Andrew McCarthy, yeah. That's kind of a hellish movie. Oh, geez, I haven't thought about that in a long time. So, I mean, in the course of like a week, Nicholson pretty much loses everything. But at the same time, you know, in this other sense, he's kind of on the rise physically because he's starting to experience the side effects of being bitten by a wolf. And so we understand as the audience that he's becoming a werewolf. But what I liked about this, and I was thinking about this in comparison to American Werewolf in London, where, you know, David Dalton's having those horrific nightmares. You know, he's seeing his dead friend. You know, I don't think that there's any transformation time in The Howling. It happens because the one character gets bitten and then the next day they become a wolf. So there's no transition time here and there. But what I liked about this was how clean and neat and sort of useful his sudden abilities were. Like that he could hear all the gossip that was going on in the office. Yep. Is that one scene where his hearing is just enhanced. He can read all those things suddenly without he did like 60 pages of editing. And David Hyde Pierce is like, so you can now you can read. So, you know, now you can read without your glasses.
And he doesn't realize that his glasses aren't on.
Yeah. Yeah. He ceased to, you know, sort of realize all these different things. And one of my favorite scenes in this movie is when he's walking past that guy and he just turns around and he goes, "How the fuck can you drink tequila this early?"
Exactly.
And he's like, "How the fuck did you know?" He goes, "I had a sip this morning." He goes, "You kidding? I can smell it a mile away." That's like the best line in the whole movie. Yep. How the fuck can you drink tequila this early? So, I mean, there's this corresponding rise and this idea that, you know, he's probably going to fight back for his job. You know, these sorts of things as his, you know, his physical confidence is restored, you know, emotionally, I guess he's starting to feel a little stronger. And then you start to meet, you know, his love interest, Michelle Pfeiffer. And I'll be honest, I hadn't seen, I think Michelle Pfeiffer is in the new Ant-Man or something like that. Before that, though, I hadn't seen Michelle Pfeiffer in a really long time. You forget how classically beautiful she is.
Yes, that's what I was saying. I was like, this woman has been gorgeous throughout the ages, you know, from Scarface to, like, I'm not recommending it, but I saw Dark Shadows, the Johnny Depp, Tim Burton movie. She doesn't age. She doesn't age from Scarface to Dark Shadows, because I think Ant-Man, they might have done a little bit of the de-aging stuff that they like to do, this woman does not age, and she's always looked beautiful.
She's just stunningly beautiful. I mean, she's not like got some sort of Playboy Playmate figure or anything like that, and she'd probably never make it as one of the, you know, like the Hammer Brides of Dracula or something like that, but she just has this chiseled sort of face. And
she looks like something like out of like old classic Hollywood, like you would see like during like the 40s, in my opinion, you know what I mean? Maybe like a different hairstyle, but facially, she looks pulled right out of that era.
Yeah. Now, one of the possibilities someone else who cast for the role was Sharon Stone.
Mm-hmm.
Sharon Stone was possibly going to play the love interest, which I think would have been really interesting because Sharon Stone in a werewolf movie back in the 90s,
Yeah.
holy shit, that would have been a whole different, they could have altered the script right there, in a number of different ways.
Yeah,
I think Sharon Stone would have been willing to do different types of things.
Because I think that was like right off of Basic Instinct and maybe right before Total Recall or the same year. So
yeah, and she did several movies along that Basic Instinct kind of line. She did that other one, Sliver.
Mm-hmm.
There were a couple of different movies she did. I think she did one with Stallone called The Specialist. That was quite I think she was quite a bit of nudity in that one. So she would have brought something completely different to that movie. But
yeah, I think she was the right age for that too. Right at that moment, the same sort of blossoming beauty as Michelle Pfeiffer in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I checked it. Michelle Pfeiffer was how old was she? 36. She was 36 at the time that this was made, so that probably put Sharon Stone in the same ballpark. So that definitely would have worked. Except I think she probably could have played it a little wilder.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been a little more wild in a werewolf movie. So I mean, I think when you get those things together, the proper motivation, comes to Jack. Like all the things start to happen. Like physically, he's getting it together. Of course, he's also running out into the woods in the middle of the night, eating deer.
Hunting down deer.
Yeah, eating deer. And a couple of other, I mean, he's, of course, unfortunately, this is also happening in the middle of the night and these sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite scenes in the whole movie is when he's in Central Park.
Yes, with the muggers.
Yeah. Oh, not just with the muggers, but with David Schwimmer. I hate David. I hate David Schwimmer. I can't stand that son of a bitch.
I'll tell you what, in the right role, like Band of Brothers, something like that, give credit where credit's due. But I know him from Friends, from all the rom-com stuff like that. My wife is a huge Friends fan, and I sat and I watched, and he was like, I would leave the room when like he was on. But I'm watching this and I'm paying attention. I'm like, holy shit, what the hell is he doing in there? And it was like right at the same time Friends was coming on. I was like, it's just weird. I'm not saying, oh, cool, David Schwimmer. But it's like, wow, David Schwimmer is in this movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because I forgot that he was in it too, and I'm like, oh shit, why is he in there? Bastard. Hold on a second. We got some comments here. Mr. Dan is here, and he says, "Hey guys, saw it. Is this in the theater?" I'm
Me
not
too,
sure.
Dan.
I don't know if I did or didn't. I don't remember. I might have. It seems like a movie I would have seen back in the 90s in the theater. And he says the heightened senses were pretty cool. Yeah, that he goes out on that balcony and he can hear all the different gossip. And then that one guy is saying, and then he busts my chops saying, I just had a sip of like a drop of tequila in my coffee. And he calls him back. He goes, don't tell people you did that. You didn't have any coffee this morning.
I like how the heightened senses were kind of subtle a lot of the times. You know what I mean? It was just like, again, him proofreading without glasses.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. It wasn't like comic booky, like, spider sense tingling or something like that. It was very subtle. He smelled the vodka, he can hear the conversation, something like that. So there's a lot of subtlety, I thought, in this film. Like the makeup on him, it's not over the top. It's just a little, patches of hair here, fangs and contacts. But, when we get to, the transformations and stuff like that, I liked how he was still, air quotes, human in his form. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He wasn't Lon Chaney covered in hair. He wasn't, on all fours like American Werewolf in London. I really liked the fact that other than a few prosthetics, he was still human, if that makes sense.
It wasn't dependent on special effects.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't dependent on, it was just dependent on the performances. And, they minimized. And I think that the original screenwriter was very bent out of shape. I think he actually quit Hollywood over this because he said that they changed his idea for the wolf into some kind of, I forget what term he used, like a teddy bear or something like that. But like he was like really bent out of shape with the idea of what Mike Nichols had done. I think he had the idea for something much rougher.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the disappointment in this movie is people were going expecting lots of effects. They were expecting a transformation, just like American Werewolf, and they got very simple prosthetics and a little bit of makeup, and they're like, wow, this isn't a werewolf.
Yeah,
But I think they also missed the underlying message of him gaining these powers, because that's something that's never been explored in a werewolf movie. Really, it's always the power and the ferociousness and the jaws, but never, oh, I can smell that tequila, I can hear people, and he's turning into a wolf, and he's starting to react to his situation like a wolf would, slowly and surely asserting his dominance,
marking his territory.
He goes after he goes after the CEO's daughter, for God's sake. He's just like, all right, you're going to fire me, you're going to offer me Eastern Europe, I'm just going to get your daughter and you're going to see it and take it. That was a really good way to sort of make this about him being a wolf without it being a science fiction sort of effects thing, which I appreciated when I saw it in the theater. But a lot of people just didn't sort of get it, what it was going for.
I think that that's an interesting point because immediately after turning down the job in Eastern Europe, that's when he really starts to talk to Michelle Pfeiffer, and then is confronted again by Christopher Plummer. And then there's that scene, no, we're going to go have some dinner. And like Plummer almost gets like right in his face, and he's like, it doesn't really make a difference. What matters is that you're inappropriate and I disapprove of you. And he's like, okay, and then they just go off and have dinner somewhere. It's like, I really don't care, that kind of thing.
Right. In that confrontation, the CEO Plummer could not reassert himself anymore against this guy. Like Jack Nicholson's character is no longer submissive, and it throws him. He doesn't know how to react.
Yeah. In reference to the makeup and the special effects, I mean, it's not, they didn't focus on transformation. They focused on the characters. I mean, it's not a painful transformation like in American Werewolf. It's not a grotesque transformation like in The Howling. There's just, it's just kind of this shift that occurs that they really give no emphasis to, because you're just kind of caught up in the story. And, with most werewolf movies, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for the transformation and what is the wolf going to look like. And here, that wasn't really what they focused on. And I don't know whether it was because, it's Mike Nichols and, he's really doesn't have much of a resume for horror, but it worked. And here we are, 27 years later, this is the movie that we're talking about. And I think they did a fantastic job. Again, going back to one of my favorite scenes after they after he slips Schwimmer is when he runs into the two punks, the three punks, and they're just like, he's like, well, I got $1,000 on me. How much do you want? $5, $10, And then, they pull the gun on him and it's just like this lunge scene, just occurs. It doesn't really, focus on gore.
Yeah, because it's all in the shadow. The whole attack is in shadow.
Yeah.
There's a homage to the original Universal. And if you didn't catch it, he's actually dressed like Larry Talbot from the Universal.
Is he?
He's got the corduroy pants with the pleats. He's got the blue button-down shirt.
The blazer.
He's totally dressed like the original.
Lon Chaney. Yeah, he's all blazered out in the park. And I thought still, I mean, and I don't know. Well, I'm just gonna say it anyway. There's just one scene where they're in the police department, and the mother of the guy who was trying to jack someone at at the gunpoint is like, well, if he was white, and I was just like, oh Jesus Christ, this movie really is ahead of its time. For fuck's sake. Yeah. If he was white, there wouldn't be. Well, if he wasn't out jacking people, you dumb fuck.
Yeah.
He'd still be alive. He'd still be alive. He'd be with you right now. You'd just
Yeah.
forget it. Never
And what a great reveal that was. Like I love like the day after. Like after the day after he kills that deer, he wakes up in like near a river or whatever, covered in blood, doesn't know what's going on, so he washes himself. Well, the next day, next time after the mugging, he's cleaning himself in the bathroom. He pulls fingers and a bloody handkerchief out of his pocket
Yeah, there's
and
this
throws them in the sink.
Yeah, there's this back and forth thing where he's still struggling with the morality of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he just got done he gets his job back. He fires James Spader. He pisses off
That scene was so awesome in the bathroom.
washroom. But then a second later, like when he's at that, you would think he's like at the height of his power, and he's with Michelle Pfeiffer now, and he's
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember if he had ditched his wife at that point, when they had that blow up in the hotel. But like a second later, that's when he pulls the fingers out,
Mm-hmm.
and he's kind of falling apart. It's still difficult for him.
It's very Wall Street because he knows he's turning into this thing that he never wanted to be. And in the beginning, part of who he was that he didn't play that game. And he was good at what he
Mm-hmm.
did. And now he's just accepting and sort of going into becoming a wolf of Wall Street, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, even Plummer says, if I knew you were this ruthless, I never would have fired you in the first place.
Right.
He becomes, he learns how to play the game, but he's playing by his own rules.
And that's what I love, like about the scene in the bathroom with Spader is when he's signing the contract with Plummer and Plummer's lawyer, and he basically says, don't tell Spader, I'm going to tell him. So he tells them, he flops, they're pissed, and he next to each other, he flops down that contract. He says, you're fired, and then he turns around and pisses all over Spader's shoes, and he says, I'm marking my territory. Yeah. So he's already thrown it in his face after he got Spader to beg.
Yep.
He got Spader to beg, don't fire me, and then his response is to piss all over him, like literally.
Yeah,
made him his bitch.
Mm-hmm.
Yep,
great.
Yep. Scene. Yeah. I'll be honest. My favorite scene in the movie is with Om Puri, Dr. Alizeus.
Mm-hmm.
Where he's kind of going over the rules.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that he would meet this little tiny man, who just, it's like a 5-10 minute scene or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it explains everything about, the morality of being a wolf, and that the wolf isn't inherently evil. He's just a wolf.
Yep.
If the man is evil, then that's another thing entirely. But if you're a good man, then, you're just going to, you're going to be very powerful, but if you're an evil bastard, then, that's another thing entirely. And that sort of sets the stage for what I call, Spader Wolf, who I didn't even notice it, I think, the first time that I saw this movie about the bite. I didn't make that connection until later. That he gets bitten, he's going to become a wolf as well, which sort of, sets the stage for the final confrontation. But it makes perfect sense.
And it was done great because when Nicholson bit Spader, it was right in the beginning.
Yeah.
When Nicholson found out that Spader was sleeping with Nicholson's wife.
Hey,
you totally forget about it because so much happens in between that bite, and then when you find out Spader's, because, like you said, Spader Wolf.
Yeah. It is interesting to see James Spader. I've never seen Spader in a horror movie since then.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't exactly your typical werewolf movie. But I think he knocked it out of the park. He's fantastic. He's just, he really is a monster.
Yeah. Like right here in this scene when he's holding Michelle Pfeiffer hostage, he's kissing her neck and like licking her ear and stuff like that as she's in peril. And what I liked about this is they didn't hide the fact that Spader was a wolf, because that whole scene when he's in the police department, he's got the yellow contacts in.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember the first time I saw that, I'm like, oh shit, when they get to the police station, and then you're like, oh, so that's who killed me, because Nicholson's wife gets killed. And if you're the audience seeing it for the first time, you're thinking, shit, did Nicholson slip out and kill his wife? But then you find out, of course not, it's Spader. And then, of course, everything clicks into place, which, sets things up for the final clash, which is okay. It's an okay scene. It's not
horses, though.
Huh?
What's with the horses, though? There's an awful lot of horse action. Like, it's a weird choice for them to be battling it out in this barn, which has got to be something to it.
I think the horses was just to show, because we had that scene earlier when Nicholson was at the party and he was walking by the horse and the horse was afraid. I think it's just a way to show that there was something unnatural about Nicholson, and then they end up living on a farm. So it was just, we have to introduce the horses so he can be locked in the stall, while the moon changes. Right. That's how I took it.
Same as the zoo, same as the cat, and I think the dog scene in American Werewolf. They never respond well. I think in the Wolfman with Del Toro, there's that dog Samson. Who doesn't seem to like him at first, and then he does, and then but that movie's sort of all over the place. That movie couldn't decide what it wanted to be, whether it wanted to be a gothic romance or a horror movie or a Rick Baker movie or a CGI movie, and and trying to be everything, it ended up being just a big fucking disappointment. But it was. I mean, it's like, I want to like that movie. I own it on Blu-ray. I own the unrated cut, so I have the theatrical and like the director's cut. And it's like Stoker's Dracula. I've stopped since I made these 2 episodes for Something Shitty on Stoker's Dracula and the Wolfman. I've stopped watching them, but for years, I would try twice a year. I would pop it in like every 6 months and say, this is the time. I'm going to find some reason to like this movie. And I never could make it past the halfway point anymore. And finally, after I did these episodes, I've sort of thrown in the towel on it. Because, having to look at that Anthony Hopkins werewolf, he looks like a rabbit orangutan or something like that. Because it's bad. It's just bad. And it's uncalled for, and they shouldn't do it. So, that sets us up for the final battle between, Spader Wolf and Nicholson. And, we know who ends up winning it in the end, because, you can't keep Jack down. And Jack, like Bill says, or like the Wolf says there, ends up becoming Jack. Kind of the ending's a little... I'm not sure. They seem to be inferring that Michelle Pfeiffer might become infected by the spirit of the wolf.
Oh, totally.
See, here's the thing.
I wonder if she got turned from a love bite.
Well, I was always wondering, like, when I first saw this as a kid, I didn't know if it was like transferred sexually. But now, after watching it this time, what if because when they both meet, she's already kind of cold to him.
Yeah.
What if she was the wolf he hit with the car?
That could be.
Oh.
You know what I mean? It could explain it more than just them, sleeping together and, love bites or something like that. What if she was the wolf that he hit with the car in the beginning because the wolf didn't die, it just ran away? It's just a thought.
I think that's an interesting theory. I had never considered that. Huh. I don't know if Mike Nichols is that sophisticated, but it's possible.
Probably not.
Yeah, probably not, but it's an interesting theory. That would be interesting.
You're trying to make it work.
Yeah. I keep saying it. That's like Marty saying that Carl Urban ought to be the next James Bond.
What I
see
him
on
as Judge,
him is the boys, Judge Dredd and the boys.
Keep him as Judge Dredd, yeah.
He might be able to do it.
He's not classy enough to be Bond. He's dirty. We want him as Judge Dredd or the boys.
Have you seen the new Bond flick, you guys?
I have not yet.
I've seen it. It's worth it.
It's
worth
good?
It. I thought it was going to be some woke piece of crap where like the new 007 slapping him around all over the place. but it wasn't. It was about 2 hours and 45 minutes. I was just telling somebody else today. Solid action. Me and my dad went to go see it, and it's a damn good movie. But it's definitively the last Daniel Craig movie. So it's a good flick. But I don't know. I think that might be a good place to bring this one to a close. I think we've kind of wrapped it up. I highly recommend it. It's not streaming anywhere right now, unfortunately, but I have my own DVD copy.
I think it's on one of the free movie apps. If you're streaming, like Crackle or Tubi or one of those.
It's not on Tubi.
Third tier ones. That's where I saw it at the beginning of September.
Okay.
I watched it during the Harvest Moon.
It's one of those things in October. Most of these channels seem to have set themselves for what they're going to do for Halloween. Hulu's got Halloween and Netflix. I have to say this: Netflix has one of the most disappointing horror selections.
Yeah, that's why I'm very happy that I found out about Tubi, because Tubi has a lot of horror.
Yeah, they do.
Now, it's about 50-50 good and bad, but they still have a lot of horror, But you never know, because Howl is on Tubi. And if you go by just the cover, you might avoid it. But Mike, me and you, we've already discussed how much we enjoyed Howl.
Right, that's a fantastic movie. You know what I'd love to cover? There's a great werewolf movie called Ginger Snaps Back.
Okay.
Yeah.
The one where the two women are trapped in the soldier fort in like the middle of the 18th or 19th century. It's fantastic. That's a fantastic werewolf movie. I love that movie. It was one of those things I caught a long time ago. I was living in another place in New Jersey. It was like 10, 12 years ago. And I was just laying on one of those Sunday afternoons where you're laying on the couch and it's raining. And I caught this werewolf movie coming on. I'm like, oh, shit, what is this? And I love that flick. So we should get to that sometime. And I'm pretty positive it's on Tubi, because you can never cover too many werewolf flicks.
Oh.
All right.
Hold on. Teen Wolf in there before the end of Halloween.
Oh, Lord. We're here next week with Silver Bullets. So I am looking forward to that. Dan says, good discussion. Need to rewatch it. Thanks for stopping by, man. We always appreciate people who stop in and see the show, and it's always good to have you back, man. Thanks so much.
One last thing I want to say about this movie is,
yeah, go ahead.
They've got good side characters, because David Hyde Pierce, he's in this all of 3 minutes. Yeah. He's great. Like, there's a scene like Jack Nicholson, he's starting this, let's get all these writers, we're going to start this firm and blah, blah, blah. And he tells David Hyde Pierce to call all these people, and nothing's really set in motion. David Hyde Pierce says, but you still want me to call them and tell them? Yes. You are my God. And he runs away. Or I love Nicholson's secretary.
Yeah,
when he's done with when he's taking off his jacket, he says, I'm going here, and he's telling her, what his plans are, and she's like, sir, has the worm turned? And he says, yeah, the worm's turned, and he's brought an Uzi, and she just looks at him, she's like, about fucking time.
Yeah.
So great side characters too.
Yeah. It's unfortunate. I mean, it's just one of those things. This is one of the overlooked werewolf movies. No one would put it in very few people would put it in their top 5. And maybe it's not a top 5, but I think it's a top.
It's still
10.
Good. It's still good.
It's still really solid.
Definitely a worthwhile movie. It definitely holds up. A lot of new movies can't hold a candle to just the pacing and the storytelling, and just it's a complete plot. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and lots of twists and undertones. It's just a good, complete movie. But at the time, it just wasn't, the style that people wanted to see.
And the thing is, this movie is a little over 2 hours, and I don't think it drags.
No,
not at all.
No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah, it's definitely solid, and you should catch it. All right. I think that's it for tonight. My thanks to Wolf for stopping by, and Eric from Hey Internet Eric here. We'll be back tomorrow with John and Ryan as we cover John Carpenter's The Fog. So Halloween is continuing. We still have 3 more movies to cover for this month, and I'm looking forward to all of them. Thanks again to both of you, and thanks to everybody. Dan, for stopping by, and take care, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow night.
All right.
Cheers.